Welcome to another side quest for The Adventure Mechanics. I'm Chandler. If you don't know, I run a game design group that talks about game design theory and showcases progress on the games each person is making. It's one of the forms of accountability that I find most helpful, even though sometimes I don't live up to my own ambitions. As new people join the group, I find they tend to ask very similar questions, especially if they're trying to break into game development as a career. As such, I've been thinking about how I can help them figure out how they can get into the industry and potentially land a job at a studio. Today I'm going to build off of my last installment of getting started in game development and explore considerations on how to grow both your skill set and your higher ability after you've taken your first steps into the game design world. So, in the last installment, I spoke as if you were starting your journey. It covered surveying your existing skill set and looking at the types of games you'd be best to work on to get you started. That includes breaking down your first game into the smallest pieces possible to ensure that you actually finish that game. Using that as a starting point, let's look at the next step, building upon that first game and taking your second and maybe third step. What would the next step be? Iteration. Getting your first game out is a huge first step and not an easy step to achieve. And although that first step is rough, it's not enough. You need to go back and build another game. I know, you just climbed that mountain once, why do it again? Well, if you want to work games, that's your life now. You might as well get into the groove of things and practice. That means the whole thing. Prototyping, pre-production, all the way to the release, and after release support needs to be practiced. If you don't want to be the buff person at the gym with chicken legs, then you need to practice with all those muscles, and all of them need to be exercised. Let's say you don't want to go back to the blank page for a new project though. What else can you do? There's a few options, but my personal go-to for iteration practice is a game jam. I've spoken on them before, but they really are the best, fastest way to get through an iteration and expand your skill set. Many even provide either theme or mechanic guidance so that blank page isn't nearly as intimidating. And with jam calendars on sites like itch.io, you can comb through and find a jam that both fits your goals and time frame you're looking to work on a new project. They really are a powerful tool to build your game design muscles. Although they are a very quick way to expand your skill set, they're also exhausting. Pacing yourself on the number of jams you join per year is a must. When I entered my first jam, I was instantly hooked. The first Ludum Dare I entered was a mess, but it was insanely fun. I wanted to do it more, so I participated in the next 6 consecutive mini-dares, which were tiny monthly jams. Needless to say, I burnt myself out by the 6th one. In order to get myself back into balance, I took a few month hiatus on game jams. If you want to participate in game jams, great. In your preparation for the jams, make sure you're giving yourself enough recovery time between jams and, possibly more importantly, real life too. Designing games is fun, but you're human and you need to take care of yourself first. One objection to the concept of game jams is the competitive aspects of them. You are technically competing either against your last game jam or other people's entries in the same jam, if it is rated. That can be overwhelming. I get it. Competing coupled with a short time frame to get your game out is massively intimidating. It can easily force you into a grind set that can and will quickly exhaust both your enthusiasm and your will to continue game design. Game jams aren't for everyone. That doesn't mean you don't need to iterate on your game design skills though. It just means you need to find a lower impact way to get your iterations in. You can still use a game jam as inspiration, especially if the blank page problem plagues you, like it does for me. Pull from previous game jam themes or use different sites that have generators to generate a theme to work with. There's also game jams that focus on mechanics instead if that's the way you prefer to work. Once you have that figured out, you need to design the game. Avoid putting code to your project at first. Really dig into your game and flesh it all out, noting each mechanic, a list of the artwork you'll need, story beats that need to happen, etc. Once you have that laid out, you'll want to set a deadline. This is important because you need to make an endpoint where you need to put the proverbial pencil down and walk away from it. And if you want to design games, walking away from a project is a skill. Learn to manage your game projects and stick to whatever your project manager you laid out. You need to make multiple games and finish them to be a full-time designer. One other way to get iterations in without using external prompts is to revisit previous designs. There's no shame in going back and taking another iteration on one of your previous games. It does require you to have previous designs, however. Make sure you write down game ideas and key mechanics whenever you have an inspiration. I personally keep a notebook for this. That way you'll have a design backlog to work from. Once you have that backlog, be it previous completed games or even just the ideas in the notebook, there are a couple ways to revisit a design. You can wipe the slate clean and redo the work from the ground up. I did this on Cartogrator a couple of times. You can also pull the previous version of the game and do a combination of refactoring and augmenting your previous work to expand on it. Both approaches have both merits and drawbacks. The clean slate approach allows you to build up a new structure, bringing in the lessons from previous iterations and even other games you've made to make a potentially stronger framework. The augmentation approach allows you to practice revisiting your work and getting back into the mindset of that framework of the game you designed. Obviously, if you're working off of one of your design ideas, then you really are just looking at it with fresh eyes and need to start from the ground up. Whichever method you end up doing, you'll still need to go through the whole process that I previously described. And remember that whichever way you choose to build a game, stick to it. You need to build and finish games. That's the designer's iteration cycle. Each game needs to be taken to its logical conclusion, even if that means dropping that game and retiring it to your backlog. Getting too attached to a given game design puts you at risk of stagnating and putting you that much further away from going full-time as a designer. If your goal is to go full-time, you need to have that portfolio. And in order for that portfolio to be built, you need to complete games. Building one game technically makes you a designer, but if you want to make a career out of it, you need to have more than one. Like in the TV and movie industries, the best-known actors are the ones that are in a lot of shows and movies. The same applies to designers, especially since games are a hit-driven industry too. You need to start making your portfolio to show both the skills you have and the style you've developed as you design games. If one of the methods you choose to build a game doesn't work for you, try a different one. There's no shame in abandoning approaches or tools that don't work for you. At the end of the day, it's only a failure if you both didn't learn from it and it caused you to quit the profession. Trying again and again is what distinguishes a real designer from the one-shots. Anyway, that's the main thrust of what I wanted to cover in this side quest. As always, if you want to ask a question, leave a comment, or even just commiserate with the challenges of designing games, you can reach out to me on various social media with my handle of JCSuron, or leave a comment under this episode. I'm curious what your experience has been in the industry, be it from a hobbyist perspective like myself, all the way through to a project manager working on a AAA title with overseeing hundreds of people. This has been an Adventure Mechanics side quest, and I'll talk to you next time. The intro and outro music are excerpts from Plinian, retro gaming version, royalty free. Music provided and produced by Lone Peak Music. Link in the description.